Hey, I'm out here with a couple of dogs that I'm taking care of. They're siblings, so they're they just play and go crazy. These are the dogs that I'm taking care of kind of a lot. I've been taking care of them for over a year. But anyway, I wanted to share. I know that it is extremely difficult for me, at least, to try to stay with one solid mindset of like who I am, what am I doing, like what is the I'm always kind of with this question of how can I get on the successful track for myself as quick as possible, as simple as possible. Like I just constantly feel exhausted, upset, depressed and angry at the past, afraid of the future, anxious and depressed in the present. And you know, I'm always just kind of set with this sense of urgency that I wish that there was some way to just be in a place of security and certainty where I'm like, oh, finally, I see it now. Like, I see this is how I can make money sustainably. This is who, like, the long term cast of characters are in my community and in my personal relationships. This is why all the past happened in whatever sort of way. I'm very anxious to have all the answers to these questions. And I can get extremely upset about it and then get kind of distracted in being upset by really taking it seriously. This idea that, like, everything is fucked, that I don't have all the answers right now. And it can make me feel even worse. And then you add on top of it the fear based on experience of the past of being preyed upon by people when you are upset and easy to emotionally take advantage of and harm, for the fun or the enjoyment of other people, or for other people to like take advantage of you in some kind of way and change your behaviors for their benefit. You know, you have the shame and the fear that that sense of like embarrassment that can go on top of that in reaction to your own emotions. And that is the part that I'm grateful I've gotten the most clarity on in the past almost a year, but more so the past like 9 months or so, I would say. That's the part that has made the most difference to me, of being like, no matter what, I always have to remember that what feels safe to me is what matters, and I can take seriously my own desires to be on my own side, and I can recognize when I'm reacting to my own judgment of myself. You know, I can realize that sometimes I have all these really intense thoughts and feelings in my head where I'm remembering things I've experienced or have witnessed other people experience, and where, um, you know, there's this sense that you have to hate and harm yourself in order for things to turn out safely. Safe for everybody, or safe for a loved one, safe for yourself. And that kind of the insight that I've gotten on to that is, it's deceptive because I am in a position where I can choose the people that I have around me. I have the insight to recognize when it's not worth making a sacrifice to let people who use these forms of communication into my life. I've decided that it isn't something that is compatible with me, and really respecting what my emotional needs are, in order to stay, how to manage my thoughts and emotions to stay feeling high. I'm gonna have to brush her fur out so much later. Where's your ball? But to keep on staying in a place of somewhat stability and looking out for the future, looking with hope towards the future, looking with more pleasure in the present, less distraction in the present, and in general operating out of desire and joy and pleasure and curiosity instead of operating out of shame and fear and anger. So that is like how I'm trying to, gradually, it might take me like 4 or 5 years even though I want it right now. And it might take that long for me to figure out like my stable life and parts of who I am and my identity, and just to have everything make more sense in my life, untangle all those knots. But sometimes it does just take longer than we think it will, but it still happens. Like, I remember when I was living in New York. I live in California now, but when I lived in New York, and it must have been 2020, it was pandemic era. Like, it's probably the winter of 2020, maybe 2021. I don't remember enough. I'd have to do some digging to really remember, but I remember it was snowy out, and I was just walking around outside, and I was wondering, like, get it! That's not what I was wondering. I was wondering, like, how do I just like flip the switch? Like, how do I just like take control of my life and feel safe and have things be enjoyable and be out of that reality I was living then and into a good one? I was like, I do not like what I'm living. I didn't like the situation I'd come out of. I didn't like my life. I didn't like my understanding of myself. I didn't like the person that I was living with. Didn't feel safe with him. And I was totally isolated out in the country. But at the time, I didn't really have the insight or the emotional bandwidth to think of the more individual parts. And some of it is kind of like that Stockholm syndrome kind of thing. Like you're almost too afraid to name the parts you're unhappy with, because you're like, am I really unhappy with it? Or am I just, not being grateful in some way, or not taking advantage of the opportunities I have? It's that kind of mindset. And sometimes it's only in retrospect that you are able to actually acknowledge what parts were things that you didn't like and that weren't compatible for you or beneficial. You get this? No, you want your sister. So, I was thinking all of that then. And here I am. I've been in a totally different situation for a while. Year and a half, 2 years, but it's however many, it's like, let's say it's 4 years since then, that point where I was in New York. It was wintertime, it was snowy outside. I was thinking of all these things when I walked around outside. It's been 4 years, and a lot has happened since then. My physical health, my mental health has really improved. My understanding of myself has improved, but it has been a very unpredictable, pain-filled journey, and I think that can change up for myself going into the future, so it's not as pain-filled. I think I figured out a lot on that front. I'm gonna keep on figuring out how to not make it pain-filled, but part of me is like, I don't want to make it too not pain-filled, because I think that, for example, with my experiences using substances, I think sometimes when we numb ourselves to pain too much, it prevents other people from taking up responsibility, and it prevents us taking more actions to solve our problems long term, So, and it just prevents having accurate feedback. So I don't want overwhelming pain, but I don't want to have no pain either. I want accurate feedback for what's authentic for me and help me have sense for what is like beautiful and joyful and worthwhile to me. But anyway, yeah, it's been a long, unpredictable journey in the past 4 years, and then you could even say like my whole life going back. Like, it's hard for me to start at a certain timeline of how like the crazy chain of events has just like been happening and happening and happening. I'm 32, and since I was 15 or 16, I feel like that's how long it's been that things have just been like just totally uncertain and unpredictable. And I also realize it's a privilege that I have this insight and I have these well, I don't know if it's a privilege even, because it might just be a part of my, you know, natural like personality, like the way that I process things and think about things. But the fact is a part of my personality. I think that it has to do with privileges I've had, or a privilege, opportunity, or not even that, but just the things I've decided that are important to me in my life, the things I've known for myself and been like, the pain is just too overwhelming. Like I have to have quiet places where I can think, because I can't survive and I can't enjoy things otherwise. Like that's the only reason why people live like lives that prioritize like isolation and time to stop and think. It's because you make other sacrifices in the process. I mean, it doesn't necessarily feel like sacrifices at the time, though, if, you know, you're just afraid to be, it doesn't feel rewarding, the things that you trade off in order to have the quiet time to be just thinking. And actually, a lot of it comes from anxiety, too, the bad experiences and the natural, I don't know. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I don't want to get too distracted. Where's your toy? But I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on this front, because it's what I'm thinking about for my own memory, at least in the future. I applied to a few jobs, and then I interviewed at a job yesterday that the job is cleaning. And it seems like a good company, a small company that they say that they're like a family. And I know some people think that that is a thing to be afraid of or to look out for when people describe themselves in that way. But I think in this case, you know, they entirely could be a company where the family aspect is safe and non-abusive. You know, there are good people in the world. And if I don't assume somebody could be a good person, then I'll never be able to connect with them, you know, if I'm always gonna just feel nice people. So sometimes people are villains, but I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they could actually be a good company, that and not even a good company, but a compatible company. A compatible company for where I am at and just needing some kind of stable income. That's another thing that I was thinking about recently, that maybe I should save it for another video because this is already kind of long. But just this idea in general that sometimes we have to change the idea of what our priorities, well, what is realistic, you know? We have to just, okay, I probably need to write down a few thoughts so I can put it into words better, so I'll save it for another video. But anyway, this is just what is on my mind today. And yeah, thank you so much for listening, and take care. Bye. The dogs say bye too. Okay. Bye.